Well, what led me to join the military was maybe partly my dad served in the Marines during World War II, and I became interested in kind of like the military and what had happened during the war. And I got interested in aviation, and the Air Force Academy just happened to be opening about the same time, a few years before, and I kind of made that a goal when I was in grade school that I wanted to get an appointment to the Air Force Academy, and it happened. When I was a pilot in Vietnam, probably one of the most indelible memories I had was not being allowed to help friendly forces on the ground that were being under attack, and we knew that if we couldn't help them out, they were going to get overrun. It was because there was a lot of politics in that war, and sometimes it took forever to get a clearance to be able to fire on the enemy, and in this case, it never came through, and I just, that kind of sticks in my memory. It leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Yeah, just one tour in Vietnam from 1970 to 1971 I was a pilot in the AC-119 gunship. Yeah, I mean, a day in the life in the military was very different depending on what you were assigned to. Started off as a student pilot. That was getting up early in the morning, flying, going to class. That went on for a year, and then training in the aircraft. I flew in Vietnam en route to going to Vietnam. Again, long days flying and studying. And then the year in Vietnam, flew 175 combat missions. And it just depended on the day. Sometimes we sat alert, waiting to be called, kind of like scrambled to go out and help, what we call troops in contact. We were involved in close air support, which was when our friendly forces were in trouble, they'd call us and be able to provide firepower to stop the enemy, from overrunning a special forces camp or, taking over friendly outpost of some type. So a lot of flying at night and sleeping during the day, so that kind of screwed up your system. And then after coming back from Vietnam, I flew heavy jet transports for a few years at Travis Air Force Base in California. That was long trips flying over the Pacific, sometimes 16 hours, in the airplane, and carrying cargo and personnel. And then the Air Force gave me an opportunity to go to law school, which I did. So I was a law student for a couple of years, and then I served as a JAG officer, a military attorney in uniform for 12 years before I retired in 1988. And I was, for the most part, I was a prosecutor, prosecuting attorney. That was totally different from being a pilot, obviously. And but again, it could involve long hours getting ready for trial, a lot of different types of work, but very satisfying career. I think all of the jobs I had in the Air Force helped develop leadership skills that I like to think I used after I got out of the Air Force and running my own private law practice for a number of years. And then in 1998, opening a small business in downtown Colorado Springs, Jack Quinn's Irish Pub. obviously, you know, you've got a lot of people working for you, and you need to show leadership. And I like to think that the leadership skills that I developed in the military carried over into civilian life. Was there a mentor or leader who shaped my outlook? I remember one commander I actually worked for when I was a lawyer in the Air Force. His name was Don Brace, and he'd been either a tanker or bomber pilot in the Air Force before becoming the base commander. And I think that I had a lot of respect for him and the way that he ran the base where I was working in Wichita, Kansas. And I think that I'll probably think that he was the type of person that I wanted to try to emulate, and display the same kind of leadership characteristics that he displayed. The most difficult challenge I faced in the military was making the transition from being what they called a rated officer or a pilot, somebody whose primary job was flying, to going into the legal profession in the Air Force, because I had my whole reason for wanting to go to the Air Force Academy was because I wanted to fly. I wanted to become a military pilot. And that decision, making the decision to leave flying and go into a completely different profession, was one that I lost a lot of sleep over. But I think I feel like I made the right decision personally, and it's one of those things where, you know, you have goals and kind of a vision of what you want to do, but sometimes when you actually get into the job, it turns out being different than what you had envisioned. And I think that's what happened with flying. To me, it was I wasn't getting as much satisfaction out of being a pilot, possibly because of the type of flying we were doing, long flights over water, you know, and I really, I guess maybe I was idealistic, but I felt like if I could become an attorney, I might be able to help people, you know, that be able to have a job where I could, my principles, you know, my beliefs could kind of drive the job I was doing, either seeking justice as a prosecutor, or on the other side, I was a defense counsel for several years, you know, for the same thing, you know, seeing that justice is done kind of from the other side of the table. But, you know, that there was a lot of satisfaction in knowing that, you know, you did your best to ensure that justice was being carried out. Transitioning from the military into civilian life always has a fair number of challenges, but I felt like for me it was a fairly smooth transition because I went to work for a law firm first in Denver, and there were a couple of guys in the firm who'd been military lawyers just like me, so that helped the transition. Also, I was hired to be a trial attorney, and the rules of evidence that you use, like in a courtroom and trying cases, were very similar in the military to those that I was using after I got out. So that transition was fairly easy. I think the toughest part for me was not having the type of camaraderie with your fellow attorneys and professionals that you had in the military. Whereas when you get out into civilian law practice, it's kind of a dog-eat-dog world, you know. The lack of camaraderie sometimes was disappointing. I wish that civilians understood more about military life insofar as the sacrifices that your family makes. Your wife and your kids suffer a lot when you're in a war zone, say in combat, because I left for Vietnam 6 months after my wife and I were married. But then the jobs I had in the Air Force, I did a lot of traveling. So I'd be away from my family for some, fairly long stretches of time. And that's when you're raising a young family, that's can become very tough. It puts a lot more pressure on your spouse to have to single-handedly be the kind of the head of the household while you're gone. But it's part of the job and part of the challenge. So that's probably the one thing I think that I would wish that maybe civilians had a better understanding of. The military shaped me, I think, and helped me become a better member of the community in that I know how much support the community gave the military when I was on active duty, and I think now as a civilian running a business, I've got a strong desire to try to give back to the community, and also to give back to the military myself in some ways through supporting different military charities and causes, like Wounded Warriors, Tunnels to Towers, things like that. As far as my family, I don't know, I think that just being in the military helped me appreciate my family that much more because of the time that I had to spend away from them. It's that the military is a great way of life. I think that young people ought to take a look at it as especially for having trouble, kind of like you're stuck getting your life started and you're looking for, not just a change of pace, but a way to serve your country, but also to get some tremendous opportunities for education, like the VA, the GI Bill, and just different kinds of technical training that you can use later in life. That you ought to take advantage of that. Don't join the military unless you love your country and have a high degree of patriotism. Because there are jobs that you're going to be asked to do that you may not like, you may not agree with, but your job is to carry out your orders. So I think that if you're not willing to, live a life where you may not always agree with what your bosses are telling you, then you ought to be working someplace else.